India's superpower myth, exposed and debunked. For the last 2 decades, India has been hyped as the next global superpower. Yet, despite all the predictions, it's nowhere near realizing that potential. The myth of India's inevitable rise is finally collapsing. So, how did this myth take hold? And why has India failed to live up to the massive expectations placed on it? Today, we're going to cut through the hype and examine what went wrong.
India has been a country that has enormous potential, and for the last 5 decades have missed many opportunities to achieve its potential. For example, when your last or former Prime Minister Narasimha Rao met my Prime Minister a few years ago and said, "You have 7 million foreign tourists come visit you. Why not bring them to India?" He said, "Yes, delighted." So we put up a plan, beautiful sketch plans of hotels that we will build, tour coaches that we will bring, but we needed an airline with landing rights. And he agreed that Singapore Airlines will form a joint venture with Tata and compete against Air India. And all these tourist destinations will be direct flights from Singapore. The Minister for Civil Aviation says, "No, this is a family heirloom." Prime Minister was overruled. The plan is gathering dust for the last 5 years.
This clip was recorded years ago, but it remains as relevant as ever. Despite endless potential, India has shown a shocking inability to capitalize on its resources. So, how did a country with so much going for it end up wasting those opportunities? The answer: poor leadership, especially under the current regime. For years, the Western media has been pushing the idea that India would rise to power, but the reality tells a completely different story. Let's take a hard look at the characteristics that define a global superpower and why India is failing to meet these basic benchmarks. 1. Demographics, a boon wasted. India's demographics, its vast, young workforce, have long been considered its greatest asset. With millions of young, talented people ready to work, India should be a global powerhouse by now. However, this potential has been squandered due to ineffective leadership. Yes, India has the numbers, but without the right vision and governance, demographics mean nothing. The country's leadership has repeatedly failed to harness its population's potential, often neglecting to build the infrastructure and industries necessary to support economic growth. 2. Cultural wealth, squandered opportunities. India's cultural richness, its diversity in food, history, music, and literature, should make it a global leader in tourism, innovation, and cultural exchanges. This diversity in culture and traditions would also contribute to a diversified economy. But instead of celebrating this, the current government has sought to narrow India's identity, undermining its diversity. Instead of capitalizing on this wealth, India's landmarks are deteriorating, and its heritage is being overlooked in favor of divisive political agendas. India's potential to be a global cultural powerhouse remains untapped. 3. Dubai, a stark contrast. Let's compare India to Dubai, a city that, in just a few decades, has transformed into one of the world's most modern and luxurious cities, despite its limited resources. Dubai's success is attributed to one key factor: competent leadership. Dubai leveraged its small population, harsh climate, and lack of natural resources through smart planning and visionary leadership. In contrast, India, with its abundance of resources, massive labor force, and cultural diversity, has failed to capitalize on these advantages due to its leadership shortcomings. The question remains: why has India, with everything it needs, failed to achieve what Dubai has? Because leadership matters. 4. The leadership vacuum, a nation without vision. The primary reason for India's stagnation is its leadership. The current government has failed to provide the vision and infrastructure necessary to propel the nation forward. Instead of making progressive choices, India has seen an era of nationalism and division. This lack of clear leadership is evident across the country. The ruling party's focus on divisive politics has taken attention away from the country's growth needs. Wealthy citizens are fleeing to places like Dubai, where competent leadership creates opportunities for growth. India's leadership crisis is its most significant roadblock to success. 5. Religious division, a deadly game. Religious division is at the core of India's challenges. The BJP's government has pushed India into an era of nationalism, but not progress. Rather than fostering unity, the government's actions have created an atmosphere of exclusion. India is built on diversity, yet under the current leadership, this foundation is being eroded. The narrow, divisive agenda not only harms social harmony but undermines the country's ability to grow and prosper. As a result, millions of Indians are alienated, and the country's potential is squandered. 6. The path forward: reform or ruin. India is on the brink. While the current government has accelerated this downward spiral, previous governments share some of the blame. Weak leadership across the board has failed to provide the change India needs. The root of India's problems lies not just in its leaders but in the culture and mindset of many who are raised there. Indian politicians have a fundamentally selfish attitude, one that sees the poor as a resource to be exploited, rather than a group deserving of a better quality of life. The political class thrives on keeping people impoverished, as it allows them to retain power and control. For meaningful reform to take place, it's crucial for the Indian diaspora, particularly NRIs and OCIs, to take a stand. Those raised in functioning democratic systems have a higher benchmark for governance and can help lead the charge for change. 7. The role of NRIs and OCIs, a call to action. NRIs and OCIs have a unique role to play in reforming India's broken system. Having experienced life in nations with strong governance, they can offer the insight and leadership India desperately needs. They must stop feeling disheartened or thinking it is somebody else's responsibility. The future of India lies in their hands, both at home and abroad. India will never fulfill its potential without a complete overhaul of its leadership. The Indian diaspora has the power to be the catalyst for change. Conclusion: India has the resources, the talent, and the cultural wealth to be a global superpower. But without visionary leadership, it will continue to fall short of its potential. The myth of India's rise has been perpetuated for years, but the reality is that India will never reach its potential under the current regime. It's time for the people, both in India and the diaspora, to take charge and shape the future.